Hello and welcome to Scrum in a Nutshell, your crash course to start understanding and applying the Scrum framework today. Scrum in a nutshell, what can you expect? This is a Scrum crash course. It will give you a high-level overview, so you're able to understand all the different basics. This is a good preparation for a deep dive, or let's say you're a new team and everybody has been working with Agile methods for quite some time and you want to blend in. Then after 15 minutes, you'll be able to perfectly blend in. But careful, you're not going to be able to pass the certification exam after just 15 minutes. I think that's fair. Let's start. What's Scrum all about? What are Scrum values? Why are we actually wanting to work with Agile rather than Waterfall or V model or other classical project management frameworks? Scrum values individuals and interactions more than processes and tools. We want to talk to our customer. Scrum values working software a lot more rather than extensive documentation. We want to have something where we can actually touch and show to the customer. Scrum values collaboration with the customer a lot more than contract negotiation held for 5 months. So we want to actually start working on the product, not everything around it, not make some lawyers happy. We want to be able to react to change fast rather than follow a plan that was thought up 12 months ago. All in all, what Scrum wants is it wants to create results fast so we can engage with our customer, and then we can go into this nice feedback loop, iterate, and make it better in the next iteration, in the next sprint. We have 3 roles: the product owner, development team, and the Scrum Master. We will go over those one by one. First of all, and arguably most important role, the product owner. He's all about the product. What's our finished result gonna look like? He's responsible for the so-called product backlog. More on that on the next slide. He's responsible for picking the most important features. What should be developed next? What's the most important feature right now for our application? Is it to make the button green or yellow? Or is it to be able to create invoices and send them out to the customer? The product owner gets to decide, and the developers then implement whatever the product owner has picked. Next role, the development team. Of course, somebody needs to be responsible for actually implementing and developing the software that we are talking about. And one important distinction in regards to other frameworks is the team is self-organized, which means there's no manager who's delegating work and picks Peter does this and Jordan does the other stuff. The team itself discusses who's best fitted to develop feature XYZ. Who will pick up the user story? Okay, I will pick up the user story about login. You will pick up the user story about sending out invoices, etc. Because you have past experience, maybe you're faster, maybe I would need a lot of help with it, so you're gonna pick it up. And we all discuss this in the round and then decide together, Peter's gonna pick up this story, Jordan is gonna pick up the next story. No manager in Scrum. Lastly, the Scrum Master. He's also not a manager. Very important distinction here. The Scrum Master is responsible for setting the framework and making sure everybody works within the constraints and the framework of Scrum. And most important task of the Scrum Master, in my personal opinion, is he removes impediments. What does it mean? It means if every 5 minutes the door opens to our development team and people are going to ask them, how's this feature coming along? When can we expect X, Y, Z? Then the Scrum Master will politely pick out the stakeholders, leave the room, and tell the stakeholders, please let our team work. Whatever impediments there are, whatever restrictions there are, why the team may not be able to work to their fullest extent, the Scrum Master should address them, handle them, and make sure the team operates at its best. Lastly, the Scrum Master also is responsible for moderating, organizing all the different Scrum events, which we'll also talk about. As promised, let's talk about the product backlog. We have one huge product, which is this huge chunk of software. We want a big CRM application. All the customer data is inside. We want to be able to generate invoices, send invoices. We want to hook up SAP, and so on and so on. This is too huge to start developing towards it. We need to be able to see the end product, then cut it down into smaller chunks of sub-products, and in the end, just those sub-products. Maybe you have a finance module, maybe you have a CRM module. Those sub-products are still too big. Maybe let's chunk them up into individual user stories. For example, one user story might be, I want to be able to generate a PDF invoice. It needs to have the customer name, the address, the itemized billing items, and maybe that's it. And then we have another user story for sending it out. And those are individual user stories, and I can work on one user story today and maybe one user story in the next sprint. The guy responsible for all of this is, you guessed it, the product owner. He gets to decide what's the most important feature. Let's start working on billing next, and fancy buttons, maybe next sprint after that. That's basically the product backlog. The most important items are on top, and all the user stories are nicely chunked so I can work on them in my next sprint. Next, the sprint backlog. In my next sprint, I want to be able to work on a specific set of user stories. I want to pick a sprint goal. What's the most important thing I want to get done in my next Scrum sprint? Maybe I want to be able to send out builds to my customers, and all the user stories inside my next sprint should follow this one sprint goal. Then the team as a whole decides what user stories should we pick for the next sprint, and all of them should work towards and support the sprint goal. And all of those user stories build our sprint backlog. And this is basically our backlog of work that we're going to develop for the next 2 weeks. I just said it. One Scrum cycle is usually 2 weeks. That's the default length. Of course, it can be 1 week. It can be 1 week. It can be 4 weeks. It can be various different lengths. Most important thing is that you don't change your sprint length every single sprint. It should be a fixed length. What events are there in every single sprint? At the beginning of the sprint, we have a sprint planning. We just talked a little bit about it. We need to pick what user stories should we work towards. We have a daily scrum. As the name suggests, this will happen daily. More information on the next slides to follow. We have a sprint review after the 2 weeks development have happened. We're going to look at what user stories have we finally developed. And at the very end, last sprint event for every single sprint, a sprint retrospective. We're going to look at our way of working. Is there something we can improve? And to finish every sprint, hopefully, we have a potentially shippable increment. What does it mean? It means that whatever I did, I hope I did not only create documentation, but rather working software. Something I can actually give to the customer. Let them sit in front of the laptop. Let them use your product, your newly developed software feature. Yes, it's maybe not completely done, but maybe they can already create an invoice. Maybe they can use it themselves. You can take a look at how your customer actually uses your software. Sprint events. First of all, sprint planning is the beginning of every single sprint. You want to select user stories from the backlog together with the team. Everybody comes together and discusses what do you think the effort for the different user stories is. You can use story points for estimation. You can use a lot of different methods for estimation. Doesn't matter. Just decide as a team what you want to do and stick with it. You can always change it up. Then, once you have estimated and made sure that all the user stories you want to do are actually possible to finish in the next sprint, you don't want to pick any user stories which are too huge. Once you've decided what to pick for the sprint, you're going to assign tasks. Who's going to do which user story? Does it make sense? Can we actually achieve our goals within the next, let's say, 2 weeks? If you decided this is going to be your sprint backlog, this is going to be your goal for the next 2 weeks. Next, the daily scrum. Ideally, this happens at the same place, at the same time, in order to reduce friction and make sure you don't eat up a lot of time that could be used for other useful tasks. 15 minutes time box. What does it mean? That means this event will have a maximum of 15 minutes. Afterwards, the Scrum Master is responsible for ending the daily Scrum and making sure the people can go about their day and start actually developing. Scrum is not about meetings, rather it's a framework where everybody can exchange, talk about, okay, I'm working on this feature, I need some help, who can help me? Okay, you're going to be able to help me because of past experience. Very nice. We're not going to discuss this inside the daily scrum, but rather I'll go find you after the daily scrum. Thanks a lot. Next guy. Talk about where you need help. That's all the daily scrum is for. Short status, find help, move on. If you're going to be done after 7 minutes, you can end the daily scrum after 7 minutes. You don't need to sit there, awkward silence for 50 minutes, or even worse, sit there and somebody feels the need to fill the entire 15 minutes with their personal status. This is not Scrum. Next one, after you've developed for 2 weeks and have ideally a lot of features to show, you want to actually show them off. In the sprint review, you can invite some different stakeholders. For example, the finance department. If you have successfully developed your invoicing mechanism, you want to show it off to finance department, somebody who actually will work with it, and you're going to show it off. You only show completed user stories, not work in progress. Make sure you only show user stories which are actually usable and potentially shippable to the customer. Don't show work in progress, only show stuff that is actually completed to your customer. And then you can get feedback. Maybe you have somebody from the finance department sit in front of the application and have them use the application or the functionality that you just developed. Make sure to take note how they're going to use your application. Do they understand the workflow? Do they understand how the buttons work? Do they look surprised by certain features? What are they missing? Take notes, and you're going to use those in the next iteration, in the next sprint. Definition of done makes sure that no user story which isn't really completed gets accidentally completed. A definition of done is picked and created by the team, and it can change and adapt over time, like most things in Scrum. And the definition of done lists what has to be done to call a user story actually completed. Okay, of course, it needs to be developed, it needs to be usable, no bugs maybe. It needs to be tested. Does it need to be documented? Do we need performance tests, integration tests? There's a lot of things you can put inside your definition of done. A lot of teams choose different things for the definition of done. Maybe you just need development, a little bit of documentation, approval by product owner, you're done. Maybe the performance tests are really integral. Maybe you want to have a sign off from security for some different functions. Whatever it is, you can decide as a team. This is our definition of done. If the story meets all the different criteria inside the definition of done, yes, check, user story completed, we are officially done. Scrum Master should make sure that no user story which doesn't meet all the criteria accidentally gets marked as completed, even though it is not. Last one, sprint retrospective at the very, very, very end of every single sprint, final sprint event. This is, very important distinction, without external stakeholders. This is just your Scrum team, circle of trust. You want to get together and reflect on how the last sprint actually went. What worked well? What doesn't work well? Are there conflicts inside the team? How are we handling them? How are we working together? Does it work what we are doing? And very importantly, don't have that only inside the sprint retrospective, but rather pick some improvements, pick 1 or 2 top improvement items where the team agrees, okay, this is something we want to work on together. And you can also add them to your next sprint backlog. So you actually make sure those get implemented. This is all about improvement. And that's already Scrum in a nutshell for you. You have your development team, the product owner, the Scrum Master, the people inside the boat, those form your Scrum team. You're working iteratively inside your different sprints. After one sprint is done, immediately next sprint is starting. And every single sprint consists of a few sprint events. You start with the sprint planning. You have a sprint backlog with a sprint goal. You do the sprint review together with your stakeholders to show off your features, and in the very end, sprint retrospective to make sure your way of working will improve over every single sprint. This is, as I said, Scrum in a nutshell. If you don't like taking notes, then all of the different information is already organized in PDF cheat sheets for you. You can see how they are looking on the screen right now. There are different cheat sheets about the Scrum framework itself, the different Scrum events and artifacts, and also the Scrum poster that I just showed as a nice reminder for you. If you want, just sign up for the newsletter at agilehackers.com and you will automatically get a link sent to your inbox where you can download those. Thanks a lot for joining, and I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.